Okay, so I've shown everybody a bunch of my bases. I haven't really shown much of the gameplay of City of Heroes. So that's what I would like to correct here. This is high level play, like level 50, even with incarnate abilities maxed out. This is my first character, a remake of my first character from back in the Paragon days. This is Randall Gray, a character who is based off of both my father and one of my first teddy bears. Over time, I eventually came up with the idea that he's the living embodiment of my dad can beat up your dad. His original incarnation was a stone super strength tank. That'd be stone armor and super strength. One of the toughest builds of a tank you could find in the Paragon days. Now, however, I've got him operating as a super strength willpower brute. Same amount of health as a tank, not quite as resilient. But he's using willpower, which makes him a lot more resilient. On top of that, he has full inspirations to draw from. Yes, I know, blank spot. But you'll find that I usually don't dip into these that often. I might burn that on the first fight. But otherwise, well, you'll see. As an incarnate, he is registered as level 50 plus 1. In incarnate content, he is level 50 plus 3. But in normal missions, he still only shows up as level 50 plus 1. That means technically, all of these guys who are level 51, they show up as equal threat range. But level 50 enemies will register as your level -1 threat range. You'll see that in the coloration. It's old MMO style stuff, or heck, even old multiple user dungeon threat ranges. White is equal. Yellow is +1 level threat. We got an orange that lists as a +2 level threat. Blue is -1 level threat. Green is -2 level threat. And everything below that is gray. And of course, the higher the threat, the better the rewards. The lower the threat, the less rewards. Really simple stuff. For this mission, I'm going in at level +0 times 8. Which means the level is +0, but they're expecting me to fight. And the enemy builds are at ×8 players. I'm taking on an 8-man team in this mob. Oh boy, that's a lot of guys, isn't it? Willpower is a fun set. The more enemies that are around you, the higher your regeneration. That was a knockout blow. Don't worry, I'll be doing that a lot. Even after all this time, Randall remains one of my go-to characters for when I just want to blow off some steam and do some random stuff. And that's what this is. This is a random mission. A police band mission on the hero side. This was something that City of Heroes needed for a long time, and City of Villains had in the form of newspaper missions. Just random heists that the villains could pull. But it didn't make sense to use a newspaper for heroes to be looking into crimes. The developers incorporated the police band, the idea being that the police are reaching out to heroes to help them with situations that have gotten out of their control. That way, we're able to do all sorts of random missions that don't really have any impact on your character or the plot. Just something to crank out. Beat up as many enemies as possible. That guy had a bad day. And that's everybody on the first floor. These missions don't really offer much in the way of unique enemies. You go up against a faction, you generally know what you're going to be up against. Let's see. What am I going to get? Put that there. That there. One of the things that infuriates me seeing other people play this game, there is like no sense to how they've set up their trays. They just leave powers in as they get them. They don't rearrange anything. They let inspirations just pile up however. See, what I've got here is what I like to call inspiration cocktails. I can just mash on F1 and get all three of these in quick succession. Plus 35 AC, plus 50 damage, plus 33 defense. It all percentage ranges. Because that's how City of Heroes operates. It's all on percentages. It's how their enhancement system works. It's how the sidekick system works. I mean, there's raw numbers that are being employed in there, but all the sidekick system has to do is be like, hey, this character is operating at level 49 now. They've got base level 49 numbers now. And then gives them... And then it's just a matter of reading what the enhancements are saying. Percentage increase of this much. Or that much. It's a system that just sounds so simple, and yet I've never seen any other MMO do it right. Not even the ones made by the same company that made this game. I'm off on a tangent. I'm just going to go back to beating people up. Hey there, Proud Boy. How do you feel? Not good, huh? Yeah. The Council are the game's resident fascists. There's also the fifth column, which are even more directly Nazis. Unfortunately, the game was shut down before the developers could really flesh out the war going on between the fifth column, and the Council. So what we wind up with is two factions that are basically the same thing. And the fifth column is so unestablished they don't even show up in radio missions. Oh boy, but that would be funny. And what's worse, the fifth column winds up seeming like a less good version of the Council. The Council has these galaxy characters throwing around the weird purple shit. It gives them just enough variation to be different. Fifth column has the same vampire guys, the same werewolves, the same robots, just with different iconography. Some super leap, get up here. I don't feel like fighting all these guys right now, so I'm just going to use this judgment power to wipe out as many as I can at once. Now this is probably looking pretty boring. And it kind of is. Like I said, I'm mostly doing this just to grind this out, beat up some enemies, get a large amount of influence from my character, currently sitting at 35 million. That'd be these numbers here. That's the currency of this game. But it may seem like a lot, it's not. I know people who have hundreds of millions, some even in the billions. Come on, guys, gather around, gather around. Me, I don't, because, well, I spend a lot of it on my, let's see, what was it, 117 characters is what I'm sitting at right now? I don't know, I need to check my character listing again. I made a lot of characters for this game. Player characters, not NPC characters. None of my stuff will ever appear in official State of Heroes stuff that I'm aware of. In any case, this character is near impossible to kill. It takes some heavy stacking of the deck against him. Usually, that'd be an archvillain. Those are enemies that have some really special, wonky background coding working in their favor. Ridiculous amounts of hit points, ramped up resistances and defenses. It can get funny when you are actually able to do things like stun or hold one of the archvillains or heroes. Same thing, just different names. So, enemies come in multiple varieties. You've got underlings. They're the weakest. These are little tiny pet-like things. There are enemies called Rickety monkeys. Think of them as like mutant rats hit with some sort of weird alien mutagen. They're annoying, they're easy to kill, they attack in swarms. And that's underlings for you. Then there's minions. These are the average mooks. Just most of these guys that I'm beating up now are minions. Minion, 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 minion. That's the lieutenant. Slightly tougher. A few more attacks. Let's see if I can find a boss amongst these guys. Nope, doesn't look like it. Normally the bosses wind up with a +2 threat range coloration. Just like the lieutenants are showing up with a +1 level threat range. But they're still the same level. Mostly ends up coming across as a shorthand for the average player. What the hell am I stopping against? Huh. Something about one of those bodies there. I think. Yep. Every so often you run into one of those quirks. I'm not even using my full repertoire against these guys. Like, if I really didn't want to be hit by any of these guys at all, I'd pop this. That ramps my defense phenomenally. They can still hit me, but it also ramps up my damage resistance. That is one of the incarnate abilities. Abilities that make your characters gods among men in this game. actually kind of funny. A level 50 character can unlock incarnate abilities, go to like level 1 stuff, find somebody who's struggling, and bam, whip out a barrier, and suddenly that level 1 character is able to fight damn near everything on the map. And get full rewards for it, too. Before I go into that room, let's see if there's anybody in here. Anybody in here? Oh! Is this labs? It's labs. Well then, let's play a game of roulette. Not literal roulette, mind you. So, inside those chambers are lab equipment. Blow them up, and the chemicals spill on you. Sometimes it's just an explosion. Most times, it's a buff or a debuff. You never know what you're going to get. A friend of mine and I, we like to wipe out everybody in the room here. And there's more room to go. We wipe out everybody in the room. We go through, we wipe out the labs, and get all the buffs stacked up on us at once. And that's buffs and debuffs. One of the funny things is, the debuffs don't last as long as the buffs. But you can still wind up getting nothing but debuffs. That's funny. You can also wind up with not everybody having the same debuffs, because the debuffs are an attack, and so they have to perform an actual 2-hit check. The buffs, on the other hand, are just buffs. They don't have to do a 2-hit check. Or maybe they do, and the developers just made it that every buff is a 100% hit chance. Goodbye. I don't know all the ins and outs of this game's mechanics. I've just got bits and pieces based on what various more learned people have told me. But I've played this game a long time, so I've learned a lot of bits and pieces. Ah, there's a boss. There's that orange coloration I was talking about. Basically, when you get a character that's able to do what Randall's doing right here, taking on a whole spawn designed to be beaten by a team of 8, and he's able to do it by himself, albeit a bit slow. You can make better characters, like, who are able to wipe out enemies even faster. But why bother grinding through all those numbers? I know that for some people, the joy of a game is to figure out all the numbers and min-max all of that. And that, I'm fairly certain, is autism. Which isn't bad. I mean, I'm starting to become of the opinion that autism is something that every human has. It's just varying degrees of it. It's probably what our pattern recognition is, what got us to stop being just basic apes. getting surprised at every new thing, and instead being the apes going, huh, that's interesting. I wonder why it does it like that. You know, instead of, fire hurts. We were the ones that went, fire hurts, but we can use it for stuff. Why does fire hurt? Oh, because it's hot. What is hot? What is cold? Why are these things the way they are? And let's face it, in our early days, we came up with some pretty goofy reasons. But lately, we are, so far, the only creatures that we know that understand orbital mechanics. We know what radio waves are. And how to generate them. Heck, we figured out how to generate so many that we practically filled the air with them. We're not just breathing air, we're breathing energy. Most of it junk. And a lot of people use this thirst for knowledge that humanity has to just better figure out how to put the least effort to gain the most rewards in everything they do. You see this in pickup artists. You see this in video games. You see this in economics. Oh man. One of the worst things we can see in economics. The biggest market crashes come around because people started gaming the system, trying to maximize rewards for the least amount of effort. I don't want debuffs. So I maximize my defenses. And that was a debuff. Lab equipment misses. It was slow. It would have slowed me down. Ooh, and that one would have negated it. It's haste. I'm moving faster. My powers are recharging faster. That would have just hit me. That was an explosion. Ooh, lethargic. Ooh, that would have been rough. I believe lethargic is, it's one of the worst. I think it is a recovery debuff. You know what? I'm going to rage. And I'm going to hit assault. I'm now doing massive damage. Oh, there's the Archon I'm supposed to be beating up. Ooh, that was a lot. Let's have a look at how hard I was hitting those guys. So, Equinox Archon. You hit the Equinox Archon with your knockout blow for 859.18 points of smashing damage. For some reason, they put a hold in knockout blow. I'm fairly certain that was a bug. And the developers just left it like that. Part of the reason is that hold takes enemies out of radiating debuffs that they're making, any auras that they have. It used to be the same way with player characters until player characters repeatedly pointed out that when they get up to a certain range, they've got a lot of toggles that they need to reactivate every single time they're held. And for anybody that's not a melee character, because melee characters get fun little powers like Indomitable Will, which keep them from getting mesmerized in any way. Cat just jumped in my lap and clawed my fucking thigh. Anyway, melee characters get fun little powers that protect them from mesmerization, so they can have these large numbers of toggles running at all times and never have to worry about having to reactivate them. But your average blaster can't get that protection-ish. But they can wind up with a nice large number of toggles themselves, such as the assault toggle here. Heck, they can even get weave and tough if they'd like. But they get knocked out, and back in the old days, those powers deactivated, just like they do for NPCs. Alright, so 859 damage. It also had a double hit for another 218 damage. Hit that guy for over 1,060 points of damage. And that's just me doing really rapid math in my head. I'm not good at doing math in my head. I'm sure there's somebody being like, hey, it was actually 1,070. It's a really big difference. So that was the Council. They're one of the most basic enemy groups in the game. Just backstory is that they're supposed to be Italian fascists. There's a whole thing about that. But the real takeaway is that they're American terrorists. Now let's see if we can find another group that might be a little more interesting. Oh wow, nothing but Council. Archon Lucretia. If their name has Archon in it, it's a Council boss. Word on the street is that the Council was poking around asking about Portacio's designers, so this is a Council mission. We received an ultimatum from members of the Council. They claim that they have File X and will use it. Okay. So again, these are the random missions. This is the police band. Just random, no one cares missions. You don't get much more than just straight rewards. So beating up enemies, you can get recipes from them, enhancements, and salvage, and influence. I'm going to go ahead and take that, but I'm going to abandon it. That would have taken me to Portal Corp. So let's see if we can find somebody else. Rescue Mikhail Levis. Arachnos. I don't feel like fighting them right now. Defeat Nellie and the Carnival of Shadows. These are Randall's different outfits. Him with the teddy bear. I'm so glad that the homecoming crew finally gave us little teddy bears that we can put on our shoulders. Female characters could already get these. I always wanted them for the males. I've got whole characters based on those little bears. Like, the bears themselves are characters. But that's more my fiction, not anything that actually operates in-game. So, Randall's not your kind of superhero who likes to wear costumes. Like, this and this are the closest that he gets. During the winter events, I usually recolor that suit red. But yeah, the idea is he's based off of my dad, so he wears outfits that I figure my dad would wear. Him wearing an Earth t-shirt thing. 2 guns. Yeah. My dad's a believer in the Second Amendment. But I'm going to go wail on those ladies in just torn pants. You'll see what I mean in a moment. The Blue Oblivion Caves. A friend of mine actually talked with one of the map makers of this game. Apparently, he helped make the caves in Oblivion. And that's where he got the inspiration for this. Master Illusionists are some of the most annoying enemies to fight in this game. For 10 seconds, you can hurt them. For 10 seconds, you can't, because they phase out of it. There are mechanics where you can phase too. And that way you can actually fight them at the same time. But it's just such a hassle. I'm fine just waiting. Master Illusionists create illusions that fight you. They massively ramp up the threat range of the enemy group you're fighting. They got the Dark Servant there. It radiates an aura that hurts you and reduces your 2-hit. Doesn't really help against Randall though. He has focused accuracy, which boosts his 2-hit. There were 2 of them. Huh. You can see what I was talking about here. She was phased, so everything was unaffected. Oh, it hurts. Knockout Blow has that wind up to it. So when it misses, you kind of feel it. It's the same feeling as like blue balls. Oh, that explains why there were 2. There were 2 groups near each other. And yeah, the Carnival of Shadows. It's like a... It's like the developers got inordinately horny when they made the first expansion for City of Heroes. These characters only show up in the 40+ level ranges. And a lot of people were like, oh, well, that's not so bad. I mean, it's a bunch of ladies. They're a carnival. How bad can they be? Well, it's a carnival with a lot of psychic damage. When it comes to the game's mission arcs, they end up taking over as the major magic faction. Oh, I chose a hell of a time to start doing this. A thunderstorm is about to start. They've got these strongmen, not really that different. They've got smashing and lethal damage. Well, it's actually all smashing damage. The fencers do psychic lethal damage. And that ends up being a main component of practically everything the carnival does. Psychic damage. At the point these characters were introduced, there wasn't much that defended against psychic damage. Stone armor had minerals, giving them defense against psychic damage. And for a long time, that was the only power set that could have defense against psychic damage. But nothing to mitigate psychic damage, nothing that resisted it. On top of that, every time you defeat one of the carnies, they release an aura that saps your endurance. That'd be this blue bar here. If it gets empty, I can't attack anymore. Also, all of my toggles shut down. These are not fun enemies to fight. Well, ish. Randall's having a fine time, and I'll go into the mechanics as to why. Indomitable Will. Defense against psionics. Willpower was introduced late in City of Heroes' lifetime. It's supposed to be the Batman defensive set. The character is able to just keep going because it's just strength of will. All sorts of players come up with their own explanations as to why characters do what they do. Why is Randall able to resist psionics? Because he's an angry man, and when he's not angry, he's drunk. And if enemies are in real trouble, he's drunk and angry. Then there's this, Mind Over Body, which also has resistance to psionics. This is the perfect power set for fighting the Carnival of Shadows. It does have a weakness. Good God, look at that costume. If an enemy can do energy damage, then willpower has a danger. It's vulnerable to energy damage. Well, not so much vulnerable in that it's more that it just doesn't have anything to mitigate it. So it makes those dark phantasms the Master Illusionist makes kind of dangerous, because those do dark energy damage, or negative energy damage. think it's Dark Servant. I'm seeing and throwing out a lot of words here. I'm gonna forget some of this. Dark Ring Mistresses, the main threat they provide is if they can hit you with their mask. She just hit me with a Mask of Weakness, so I'm doing less damage and I'm less accurate. Boo-hoo. Oh, now I'm enraged. Now I'm doing more damage. Oh, you got him drunk and angry. Pow! Okay, so I'm going to finish recording up here once this mission is done, and I'm going to get off the computer. If I can hit this guy... I'm not too worried about the thunderstorm. The infrastructure where I live has been repeatedly curb stomped by blizzards, so it keeps getting inadvertent upgrades as it's built and rebuilt by the electric company, by the telephone company, and now by Spectrum. And when they rebuild it, they use all the new methods that they've learned over the years. Rather than just, oh, well, that got knocked down, better put it back up. I live in northern New York, by the way. As New York City residents would call it, Hickville. There's an entire state attached to that city, and people keep forgetting it's there. You know, like, a full third of the corn used in the United States is grown here. That's the stuff that you get in cans, the stuff that's put into ethanol development. Grown right here in the U.S. Right here in northern New York. A full third of it. I always thought there was more like out in the Midwest, but no, it's just here in northern New York and like Washington and Oregon. The Midwest doesn't really do any corn growth. Theirs is more wheat and oats. Who the hell did I... Oh. I wish we could have gotten those helmets that the strongmen use. They're neat. I'm sure there are some people who wish that they could get the outfits that the carnies wear. We get something like them. We can never end up looking like the strongmen, though. The strongmen have really weird bodies. They've got like claw marks all over their backs too. Don't think too hard about that. Well, that was a couple of random missions of City of Heroes, featuring one of my main characters, the first character I made when Homecoming was opened up, who is a remake of the first character I made in City of Heroes, back in the Paragon days. Went up against equal level enemies he is damn near impossible to defeat. There, now he's got a pair of tiny bears clinging to his shoulders. Alright, well, next time I'm going to play a character that's not so overwhelming, and you can see what a more traditional mission progression is. Heck, I might even get beat up. Until then, have a good one.